Hi all, welcome to this latest edition of Off the Post. We basically are delving into the weekend review of the games, like English, like Championship, League 1, League 2, and then a bit of Scotland as well. So plenty to kind of dig our teeth into as more leagues are starting to kind of get into kind of like normality again now. But yeah, pretty much England and Scotland near enough all kind of settled. Obviously it's just the Premier League starting back is, and like the rest of the top 5 leagues are kind of really where we're at. Like Belgium kind of quite a few games in now, Croatia, Denmark, Finland, Poland, Russia, Romania, they're all kind of just at least a game in, kind of like now they're at least a few games in. And like from what I'm seeing so far, like Dynamo's, like when you look at some of the smaller leagues, like Belgium, Croatia, Denmark, and that, like Union Saint Galois, they were obviously surprise package last season, and yes, they won the regular league, but obviously fell short in the, like when it goes to the playoffs, as it were. And for me personally, they've kind of just kept going what they were doing. Like yes, they've not got Undav, but they've, like Van Zier is kind of like their focal point this season for up front. So see how that plays out. Zagreb, when you talk about like Croatia for example, they are they started a bit wobbly against Lokomotiv Zagreb, but they've suddenly turned it around and looked very impressive since. And it makes all the difference really, because these kind of teams have, like, they're kind of consistent within like their leagues, and you just get on with it. I think one league that is a little bit interesting on how it's kind of started is Denmark, mainly because Midtjylland, Copenhagen, and Brøndby aren't where we thought they would be. Like I know there's only 3 games in, but Midtjylland sit 5th, Copenhagen 8th, and Brøndby 9th. Top 4 isn't necessarily what you'd have expected, which is Norgesland at top, Silkeborg, Horsens, Viborg. I didn't expect that, but that's football for you. Obviously, we'll, like with England, for example, like Championship, Burnley. I liked when I'm listening to quite a lot of the like programs that were like EFL obviously is no longer on Quest, it's on ITV. Like they were picking apart Burnley, saying, "Oh, they've not done like this well in like the Championship or whatever." They were getting all their stats wrong, and I'm like, "Come on, Dean Ashton. Usually you're a little bit better for your knowledge, but there's only 7 teams now that could go all 46 games with a win." For those that care about that. Millwall obviously sit top of the league with Hull as well. Blackburn, Blackpool, Burnley, Cardiff, Watford. Only 7 teams winning at the weekend there. Quite a lot of draws. Stoke, Huddersfield, Sheffield United, QPR, Norwich, Reading, and Bristol City. A bit of work to do, if you want to put it that way. Like when I was hoping I've got like the previews for like each division, and like when I looked over the Championship, the 3 I thought were going down for this season would be Reading. Felt quite, not necessarily 100% on, but I thought like Reading seemed to give me that feeling that they could go down. Birmingham felt like a strong second, and then third was really could have been anywhere, because you could have said Wigan, you could say Rotherham, you could say Sunderland, you could say Blackpool, you could even throw in Hull into the equation. But I think realistically, I think Rotherham could be your third team going down, but be nip and tuck. But I suppose it would depend on a lot of teams this season, if I'm honest. But Birmingham and Reading for me feel like they're 2 that will go down. Something just feels like there's going to happen with those 2. I don't know why. But time will tell, of course, as like the weeks and months progress. Polish League, I had to laugh. Was last season, Legia Warsaw were rotten. For chunks of the season, they couldn't buy a win, and you thought, here we go. And people were thinking Legia's down, they're as good as down here. And, a lot of people believed that. What's scary is that this season, Lech Poznan have started bad, which is quite startling. They have played two, lost two. Legia's lost the recent game to Cracovia. The Polish League's weird the last couple of years. It's almost like the pandemics went a bit weird for it, because Wisla Plock, Cracovia, Rakow, in Rakow's case, they're slowly starting to show a bit of establishment. Last season they were close to the league, but not near enough, and they fell. Now obviously they fell a little bit short, but they still got European football. Pogoń Szczecin, they had obviously a couple of their players getting nabbed by bigger teams, but then you've got your usual names like Lechia, Gdansk, and as I said, Lech Poznan. But the thing with the Polish League, and this is when a lot of their teams, more established teams, you tend to find they'll be in say the top half of the table. They might end up in Europe for one season, do terrible, and hamper their coefficient, but then hamper themselves in the process for the following season because they've had maybe qualified. They've most likely just had qualifiers. So I think over the last 4 or 5 seasons it's been Plask Gliwice, Gdansk, Jagiellonia, Górnik Zabrze, Slask Warkrok, Pogoń. I think even Wisla Plock even had one stint maybe in Europe, but it's just interesting when you kind of look over these smaller leagues and just kind of see how they've developed over time. Romania, delving into Romania, they're a few games in as well. The most interesting part of all of this, when you look at the league table, is Steaua Bucharest sit for bottom. They've spent even more money to try and compete right away, and they're already 5 points behind Farul Constantin and Botasani, and 4 behind Cluj. But you'd still realistically think that Steaua Bucharest, Cluj, coming into the season, should be realistically in the top 2. You'd think, just due to how both teams are these days, and they seem to at least be consistent. But time will tell, of course. It's going to be fun and games as the weeks and months progress. Salzburg starting not the best, mainly because obviously they got beat Sturm Graz at the weekend. And what's funny is a lot of eyes are on Sesko at the moment for Salzburg, because Manchester United want him, a few other teams want him, and they're suddenly painting him as this unbelievable super striker. That where it's people are saying, where on earth are Salzburg and the Red Bull hierarchy finding all these players? It's unbelievable. But they kind of got their reality check at the weekend there. Because they've got Fernando, which they got from Shakhtar, I believe. Okafor, still there. But the problem is this club kind of just goes through quite a lot of change, and I think that's what hampers them a little bit, because they constantly go through change. The team sometimes doesn't have 100% stability like it could have. Yes, they'll probably romp to the league title, because Rapid Vienna, Linz, LSK Linz, Sturm Graz just won't remain consistent. It is worth noting as well in the Austrian League that Austria Vienna starting with a 3-point penalty for the season, so that helps teams like Klagenfurt, Altach, Ried, Lustenau, Halberg all get kind of a head start, because Austria Vienna, I don't 100% know if I'd have to maybe do a bit more digging on it. Don't know what their situation is at the moment, because I would imagine that could they suddenly be at risk of going down, because obviously financial problems. But like with the Austrian League, it's one of those leagues that it's a bit of a shame that it is it's like a one team league and the rest of the teams jid. But I remember, as I said, it was like a few seasons ago, Linz were challenging for the league title, they were clear, then they got the penalties because of like training during COVID and everything else thrown upon them, and then when the points get all split in the divisions, it just threw them even further, and it was just a bit chaotic really at the end of the day. But we'll see how they do this season. It's just good to watch really, seeing how other teams do. Belgian League, as we said with Union, they obviously are 1-1-1 draw. Antwerp are the biggest ones that everyone's kind of like talking about this season in the league, solely because of their squad. They've obviously spent serious money to bring players in. Didier Zielam-Kell, obviously, who's had quite a bit of a turbulent time of like late. He's went to obviously Ammonia because he's been kind of going a bit everywhere, because he went like over the last few like months he's been everywhere. So he went from Antwerp to Russia, suddenly was right back to Belgium, then went suddenly out to France. That didn't really go to plan, and then he's now obviously went out to the Cypriot League, which is now an actual transfer. But the last couple of seasons he's been a bit of notoriety, which is a bit of, you don't really want in football, and it creates more attention on you, like with how the team's behaving. But as we like, the ones that are interesting, obviously Gaston Avila, Toby Alderweireld, like they've been ambitious. Like even Vincent Janssen, I suppose they've got to try and get themselves. But as a few people have said to me when I've spoke to them, the problem is it's as great as maybe the team could be, where they've maybe got depth in the squad, it's the egos in the team. That's where it could go against them, because like Alderweireld, you'd think at his age would be still, maybe if he was good enough he would have still been in the Premiership. Richie Delaza, a veteran, player, still a half decent defender for the Belgian League. Victor Fischer, Raja, Berger, Verstraete, Michael Fry, Vincent Janssen. So they've definitely got depth in parts. It's just people have said to me that it's just more attitudes and egos within the team. But Ostend, they're trying to be not necessarily ambitious, they're trying to build as much depth within the team as possible. But it'll be interesting how the weeks go with this one, because I'm thinking could be one of like say 6 or 7 teams that genuinely could be up there come the end of the season. Czech League, for the non-Czech football league fans, but those that don't like it will be delighted that Sparta Prague and Slavia Prague both lost in the opening day. But yeah, I'm not overly fussed for, like, the only time I'm really fussed for the Czech League is from a FIFA perspective, because we do it for predictions and stuff. For League One, for me, this could be the most I think this could be one of the most competitive divisions in all the leagues. And the reason why I say that is, when I look at League One, the teams that could go up is quite considerable. You've got Wycombe, you've got Peterborough, you've got Derby, you've got Plymouth, you've got Portsmouth, you've got Sheffield Wednesday, you'd assume Ipswich will be challenging, Barnsley, MK Dons and Oxford. And like, when you've got at least say half a division at least that genuinely all of them have a good strong shout of going up, Wycombe would like to make amends on losing out in the playoffs. Peterborough obviously might want to be bouncing back. Same for Derby, because they've obviously tried to be quite ambitious with their spending. Plymouth, they'll kind of want to be doing the same. They would like to hopefully get up. And same like with Portsmouth, Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich, there's an expectation maybe on them to get up this season. Barnsley is an interesting one, because obviously yes, they went down bottom of the table from Championship, but like there should be an expectation that they're good enough in theory to get right back up. In terms of like for going down, I personally think it will be Fleetwood, Bristol Rovers, possibly Morecambe, possibly not a gimme, and possibly one of maybe Shrewsbury, Cheltenham. I would imagine if Exeter, now that they're up, now that they've got the monkey off the back the last few seasons, I think they'll be fine, personally. I feel they're good enough to just stay up. League 2, Stockport's obviously going to be the interesting one from that division, solely because they've got themselves back up by the skin of their teeth. Bradford City, a lot of eyes will be on them because of Mark Hughes. What will he do with them? From there, like Salford, could they finally go up? Well, what AFC Wimbledon bounce back up? From there, there's like say like Newport, Doncaster, Tranmere, Gillingham, Mansfield, Swindon. There's definitely like this is another division when you break it down. There's definitely say 10-15 teams that have a good shout. Like especially you would in theory say the 4 teams that went down. And then for there, the teams that just missed out last season, like say your Harrogate, Newport, and it just comes down to like from there you say to yourself who realistically could go down, and that's when you start thinking maybe Grimsby. Stockport is up for debate, but I think they'll do fine. But it's generally at the moment like you'd maybe say like Gillingham and Crawley are maybe 2 that could happen. Going on first day of the season's form, if you watch the Hartlepool game, you might actually think they could go down because they genuinely didn't look the best. And Colchester, depends what kind of form they bring, I suppose, this season. It's going to be interesting how that one plays out. Obviously, the French second tier, that'll be interesting with St Etienne starting off horribly with a loss. Bordeaux's an interesting one because they technically should be going down the third tier, but at the moment they're playing their second tier games because obviously financial problems. It is worth noting as well that the French Federation gave a 3-point penalty to St Etienne. I believe that was turned because of the riots during the playoff final that they lost, where all the fans invaded the pitch. I would imagine the likes of Metz, St Etienne and Bordeaux will be trying their hardest to bounce back up. Paris will try their hardest to not slip up this time because they kind of fell away when they looked good for going up. And then for there it's kind of hard. Like Guingamp will be trying to get themselves up there. Dijon. It's second tier for some leagues is a lot harder. Namely the top 5 leagues, I generally do find some of them are a little bit trickier to kind of judge in terms of where to go. Over to Scotland, obviously this is a good chunk of review, or not a good chunk of the review. Rangers had to come from behind. Hearts initially were a bit cagey, but in namely the first half, but second half they got their goals, but then they sat back, done a lot of changing, and it cost them because they conceded from their changes, and in some people's eyes, they were lucky to hold out for the win. They could have got a draw. Kilmarnock, Dundee United, not the result really that Dundee United wanted. They wanted to probably go straight into the games against AZ Alkmaar with a win, especially going down to 10 men. I think there's going to be, with Dundee United, it's going to be interesting to see how the team plays this season with Tony Watt, Fletcher, Cujo, Levitt, because they're kind of seen as like the main four, but then obviously Ian Harkes, Craig Sibbald, there, and even to an extent like Middleton and Nicky Clark, they'll kind of be expected to chip in where possible, but like Hibs, they need to buck up their ideas a little bit. Great that they won, but it's worth noting that they had 14 shots on goal, 10 of them off target, and there was jokes going made by fans at the game, fans watching on like Hibs TV and so forth, and saying, "Oh, the shots have been that bad that they've like anyone that was eating a pie or something, or having a cup of Bovril or coffee or whatever, or hitting their drums, the footballs went through the drum or whatever, and it was just like chaotic. It was just shambolic shooting, but they were just trying to be funny. Everyone was just trying to outdo each other, but end of the day, Hibs got a win. They go into the game at the weekend, which we'll preview on Friday with the Edinburgh Derby, and you never know. Edinburgh Derbies, the thing is, Hibs and Hearts could have played each other, like the Hibs and Hearts could have been the 12th game of the season, and Hibs and Hearts could have won 11, and regardless, or Hibs had won 11, Hearts had lost 11, or drew 11, or whatever, and doesn't matter what the form was going into the game, it would be a different kettle of fish on Derby Day. Doesn't matter what was going on. And obviously Celtic started well, and Motherwell bounced back from their embarrassing losses to Sligo. But at the moment, early days obviously in Scotland, transfers kind of going thick and fast. Obviously the Martin Boyle transfer to Hibs is slowly gained pace over the last 24 hours. Like, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because if he was to end up back at Hibs, then fair play, because there's been whispers and rumours that he's been offered like 8 to 10 grand a week, and whether that's true or not is a different matter, but I suppose that's people putting it in the papers and social media to try and generate a bit of buzz, which like we've seen it enough times and heard it enough times over the months and years when it comes to football. Swiss League, I think normal service will resume this season. Zurich, obviously, currently bottom of the league, just the 1 point, and I think teams are a little bit more prepared this season. It is worth noting as well, they have yet to score. But I would say Young Boys, St Gallen, Basel should generally be like the top like three. St Gallen seem to be a bit shrewd with the club. I think a lot of it is because of like Jordi Quintilla. Like, the reason why I say that is because obviously he transferred and came back, and it's worth noting with Zurich, they've done quite a bit of business. And I think for them, not sure if it'll backfire on them per se, but I think it's because Gnotto, there is like talk of him leaving and going elsewhere, question of who's going to go for him, and I suppose it just wait and see really. That's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. Like, you can only just wait and see how that kind of plays out, because some teams will be able to afford them, because there was talk of like Feyenoord, for example, we're looking at them. There's teams I believe elsewhere, what I found the most funny when it came to like some of the teams for like when it was the Swiss League is Florian Camberry used to play for us at Hibs, had stints at Aberdeen and Rangers as well. Like what was funny was he went from Hibs to Rangers like unceremoniously. It was kind of frowned upon the way that went about. Did nothing at Rangers, went to St Gallen, did nothing at St Gallen, went to Aberdeen, did nothing at Aberdeen, went to Sheffield Wednesday, didn't really do much there. Now he's back in the Swiss League, and it's going to be interesting. He's not really. It's almost like the attitude's just kind of like disappeared. Not necessarily disappeared, but it's like something's just went amiss, really. Like the one that interests me when I look at like the Swiss, when I looked at the Swiss League, is Cedric Itten joining Young Boys from a fair spend that they spent on from Rangers, like fair play to Rangers for getting the amount of money that they did for him, and like and Sam being back at the team after being on loan to Venezia, like will he score like 20-25 goals again? Like I'm not sure. He didn't really set like because what's more startling about him is like the last say 4 or 5 seasons in the Swiss League, he's been a proven scorer, scoring goals for fun, and you thought if he was going to transfer, like when he did go to Italy, you might have thought, oh, maybe a bigger team than Venezia, to be honest, but it will be intriguing to see how he does this season because obviously he only played not the most amount of games really at Venezia, but you've got to remember as well he did join in January but didn't really, he was mostly off the bench, and also he did have a bad injury this time last year, so there will be probably some expectation on him to kind of say, right, we're expecting goals from you, please deliver. Like you're kind of like seen as our main forward. Yes, you went out on loan last season, but we still expect you to deliver like 15 goals for us or whatever. But see how it progresses, obviously, and just take it from there. But as I said, early days across a number of leagues, and yeah, it will be interesting to see how it kind of plays out, obviously. So let me know, folks, how your team did at the weekend if your team played. Have a good one, folks. Take it easy all, and I'll speak to you all later.